Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Turn Bark Time. I'm the Turn.
I'm Bark.
And we're still here for a long time. Season 2. Episode 17. This doesn't come out really nice and even, but 17 is what we are on. Welcome back. I hope you're here. This is going to be a real fun category, and I just want to preface this with, I got a text message. I believe on Tuesday, and all of this text message said was cocaine hippos of Colombia. And my response to this text message was, I'm in. And Barker's response was,
this is why we work so well together?
Yep, because most people wouldn't know what the heck he was talking about. So we're going to talk about the cocaine hippos of Colombia. And Barker, walk the people through. What was your reasoning for this?
Well, I'm a fine connoisseur of dad jokes, and it all came about because I was like trying to find one for hypocritical, and I was like thinking about it, and then I told people about these, Pablo Escobar, who was the head of the Medellin drug cartel and moved lots of cocaine from Colombia to Mexico to America. Thank you, Netflix, for dramatizing that. And so, I would tell kids the story and I get to the punchline and they're like, oh, it's fake. And I'm like, no, the hippos are real.
Oh, yeah.
Now, granted, when you say like cocaine hippos, people envision like the radioactive boars of Chernobyl.
Yeah.
Like, they're just hippos that he bought with cocaine money.
Yeah.
I've yet to find any record of him feeding cocaine to the hippos. So just calm down. They're not mutant hippos.
That would cost him so much money to feed the cocaine to the hippos. Like, he would lose money on that.
Big animals.
Yeah.
So long story short, what happened was in Pablo Escobar's heyday, so somewhere between the late 70s and the early 80s, because one doesn't exactly keep receipts when buying hippos and other exotic animals that are probably not necessarily legal to import to Colombia or to export from other places. Like, he bought the hippos in America. I did see an article that said New Orleans, but we'll see if that's true or not. There's kind of a shady history between hippos and Louisiana that I'll get to later. So bonus content. But he brought four hippos, right? And if you're not, everybody loves hippos, right? Big shout out to our fake niece, Caitlin.
Yeah, Caitlin, hippo lover.
Down in the Tri-Cities. Hopefully this doesn't change your opinion of the lovable hippos, as everybody likes to deem them. But so Pablo Escobar built himself a zoo at his, for lack of a better term, his drug dealer mansion,
his compound,
the Hacienda Nápoles.
Yeah, Hacienda,
which is now a Jurassic Park-esque animal park.
Yep,
they've turned it into a tourist attraction. So, anyways, Pablo has other animals, brings these 4 hippos in, and then in 1993, things between the Medellin cartel and the government go south, and he gets shot. And so the government takes control of the Hacienda Nápoles, and they distribute all of the other exotic animals to other zoos, except for the hippos.
Because if you didn't know this, hippos are pretty hard to transport. They're not like an easy animal to pack up and move.
They weigh roughly somewhere. It's an adult hippo. If it's a male, females are smaller. There's sexual dimorphism, meaning the males are bigger, just like gorillas. A lot of other species. But anyway, a male hippo can get up to 9,000 pounds. 9,000 pounds. And then a female hippo, at her slenderest, is 3,000 pounds. So, right, they're not exactly small animals. They're very territorial, and they can be very aggressive, right? They estimate, according to the BBC, So if I'm wrong, blame the BBC.
The BBC.
Brought to you by the British Broadcasting Channel. Anyways, they estimate that hippos kill 500 people a year in Africa. And the reason it's in Africa, I was confused by this because you Google it and it says 3,000 people globally, but hippos only exist in Africa.
In Colombia.
So how can they kill the other 2,500 people? Yeah. Do they go on like covert hippo assassination missions?
Done. The 9,000-pound hippo like tiptoeing.
They just drop hippos out of the sky.
Piloted from planes, piloted by hippos.
They just make their cute little like sounds as they like smash people.
Yep. Land on people.
Yeah. So the problem is the government just kind of like was like deuces, we're out. And these hippos went back to the wild. Like they expanded through the compound. And hippos are known for being quite amorous. And they're the third largest land mammal. So they're not, I think they're behind hippos and elephants and rhinos. Sorry, they're hippos. Hippos are behind hippos? No, it doesn't work. They're behind elephants and rhinos. But it started with 4, and now they estimate that there's somewhere between like 90 and 100, over 100 hippos in Colombia. And the problem is that hippos aren't supposed to be in Colombia, right? Just like if you put me, I don't know, you put me in Canada, I'm not supposed to be there.
We put you in Colombia. It'd be the same thing.
I've got no natural predators. Watch out.
Yeah.
And so there's debate about whether. So everybody loves hippos, like our friend Caitlin, right? Oh, they're so cute. Look at their ears. But then they can also like do things where like they can like drown you or like eat you.
Kill you.
Yeah, they can kill you. And they also produce per hippo about 400 pounds of poo a day.
Yeah.
Or sorry, as they say, we've been reading a lot of scientific articles. Organic material that is introduced to the water systems. It's a really nice way of just saying poop.
Poo. They poo a lot.
Poo. Big animal, big poo. And so part of the problem from an ecological standpoint is that all that poo leads to algae, and that algae grows during the day, which is fine, and it produces a lot of oxygen. But the problem is at night when the sun goes down, those plants quit producing oxygen or something, and they suck like all the oxygen out of the water.
Yeah.
And then that sucks for the fish because there's no oxygen left in the water for the fish to extract so they can breathe. So it leads to fish die off, which has happened in places in Kenya, which is what people are citing as evidence for why hippos are bad, and hippos should be, they're an invasive species, right? They're the cane toads of Colombia. They're just way bigger.
Yep.
And people like them a lot more. And on the flip side, the one article is that's like, are they good? And they compare them to freaking like prehistoric giant llamas. They're like, the last time there was a terrestrial animal of this size in the Americas, it was the big-headed llama. You know what happened to him? His head got too big. He was too full of himself. The people came and ate him, right? So they wanted to, like, things go back to, like, they're like, it could restore the environment to, like, what it was, like, in the freaking, like, Pleistocene or whatever. Like, somebody's going to go look up, like, it's not the Jurassic period, it's the, and I don't care. Yeah. Like, they're going to take the environment back 10,000 years.
Yeah.
Right? And that's not necessarily good for all of the animals that have adapted and like live on the planet in this time frame. So the question is, what do we do with these hippos? And the government said we could shoot the hippos. And they brought in, the military went out on a hippo hunt, and they killed, his name was Pepe. R.I.P. Pepe.
Yeah. Sounds like Harambe. Oh no, it's all starting all over again.
He's like the Colombian Harambe. And people got mad because like they took like the, like a sporting picture of like all these military dudes around this hippo, and people were like, don't kill the hippos, they're fat, lovable people. That's why people like me so much, I guess. I don't know, right? And so now the question is, how do we deal with the hippos?
And one of the biggest things is, so they've looked at this, and they're actually like, it's a contentious issue. Like, I thought this would kind of be like a no-brainer. Like, everyone would be like, yeah, like shouldn't have hippos here. We need to get rid of hippos. But there are actually people, a large amount of people in Colombia who are like, don't kill these hippos. Like, we like them. And there are even biologists that come out and say, well, like, this guarantees that the hippo population worldwide will last. Because, like, obviously Africa has its own issues and things like that. And so they're worried about hippos in Africa. And so they're like, well, if we have this herd of hippos, which is the largest herd of hippos outside of Africa, no duh, right? Because the next largest hippos herd is in the zoo somewhere with like 4 of them, maybe. And so, you're talking 90 to 120 hippos that are living. So they're like, okay, what can we do to control them? So this led me to the question of, like, if these hippos are basically eating, pooping, and making hippo babies, like, what's the gestation period for a hippo? And we learned it's 8 months. So hippos, even though they're larger than us, pump out babies faster than us by about a month. And so the logical explanation that they kind of came up with, they're like, hey, let's control the hippo population by sterilization, right? So we'll
Thanks, Bob Barker.
Yeah, we'll control them. Yeah, help control the pet population. Have your hippos spayed or neutered, But here's the problem. And Barker informed me this. Barker, let's go ahead and talk about the anatomy of a hippo and talk about how hard it is to sterilize them.
So, well, to sterilize them, they castrate them just like you would with bulls or horses or whatever, right? The problem with the anatomy of a hippo is where in a lot of those livestock animals, the bits and pieces that you need to get rid of are on the outside. The hippo, they're inside the body. They're protected by a layer of fat. Because apparently that is one of the things that the hippos, when 2 male hippos try and fight, that is one of the target areas. So it's a natural adaptation that they retract into the body. And in a Scientific American article I was reading, cite your source, they can retract up to 16 inches, which, I mean, I was like, yeah, like you're like elbow deep. And so they have to like try and trank these 9,000-pound hippos. Now you got to play the game of too much kills them and not enough they eat you. And like you literally have to trank them, roll them on their side, lift their leg with a crane.
Yep. Make
the incision. You take an ultrasound, you locate them, make the incision, then you have to re-ultrasound because when the body, as a natural defense mechanism, and they retreat into the body, and then you have to go find them. And I think they were saying, I was watching, I think it was Vox was there, and they were talking to a biologist, and he said that they castrate 1 per year for $50,000.
$50,000 for 1 hippo, and they're in the wild. You can't guarantee.
But that's only 1 hippo, and there's like 5 to 10 hippos being born per year. Like you're losing the race.
Yep.
Right. And to relocate a juvenile hippo, it's $4,500, and that was just a domestic relocation in Colombia, right? So they're not even leaving Colombia yet. And part of the problem is that they have no natural predators.
Nope.
Really, you think about like what the big thing that limits hippo population in Africa. One of the biggest things is environmental factors, it's drought. And so like there's a dry season, the water dries up, and if there's too many hippos, like there's not enough water to go around, they stay out of the water and they die. The problem in Colombia is Colombia doesn't have droughts.
Yeah.
And so there's never, and there's also, if there's never a drought, there's never a dip in food.
Yeah.
So these hippos are literally eating it's somebody called it Hippo Paradise because it literally is Hippo Paradise. Like it's always rainy, there's always plenty of water, and there's always plenty of food. So what do animals do? Like you go back to like Darwin, right? Survival of the fittest. He whoever lives the most and has the most progeny, which means like you just need to like eat and reproduce as long as possible. That's what these hippos are doing. And the problem is that they've tried to put up, like they even showed there, like around the hacienda, they're like, here's the fence with rocks. And they were talking to the guy and they're like, does that work? And he's like, oh no, they just jump.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, it's got barbed wire on it. He's like, it's like a scratch to them. He's like, they don't care. And the problem is that when, and this is where some of the deaths happen in Africa, is when the drought hits, it forces fishermen in Kenya to invade upon the territory of the hippos because there's less water, right? So like the fish are in that smaller amount of water with the hippos, and then the hippos get territorial and like knock over the fishermen to protect their area, and that's where it like leads to the death of people. It's not like hippos are stalking people and like eating them in the night, as terrorizing as that would be. But like there's they're starting to. It's the same problem as like cities get closer to like the American wilderness and like bears and cougars and stuff like Afreda, cougars in your house.
Yep.
Go Cougs. Now instead of a 180 pound, 200 pound cat, it's a 9,000 pound
hippo
tank of nature.
Yep.
Right. It's really hard to understand, like, and it really has put Colombia's like in this like terrible spot where they're like, people just like them.
Yeah.
And like they literally went through and they listed like, you can hunt jaguars, you can hunt bears, you can hunt, like listed off like all these other animals that are invasive, like that are species that cause problems. He's like, nobody cares. Like, but you kill one hippo and the whole country calls you a murderer.
Yep.
And he's like, they are damaging. And it's not only that, like they change the environment. They potentially could trample all the grassland or damage the grasslands. They're competing in the environment with the Antillean manatee, right? Who's going to save the manatees? Manatee Man, right? Yeah. Sorry, that's a Z100 bit from way back when. And like I think there's turtles as well, but like they're anytime something comes into a habitat that's not supposed to be there, it screws stuff up. And it really should be a cautionary tale. And my bonus fact for this episode, Mr. Turner, is that it almost happened in America.
Really? Okay, lay it on me. The New Orleans Hippos.
In 1910, a representative from Louisiana introduced a bill, 2361 in 1910 to the 62nd Congress, introduced a bill to spend $250,000, which today would be about $7 million, to import hippos to the bayous of Louisiana.
What was his logic?
Twofold. First problem, a Japanese delegation had come to visit and they brought a beautiful water hyacinth. The problem is that the water hyacinth, while beautiful, clogs American waterways.
Yep.
So they had all of these plants, invasive plants. How do we get rid of invasive plants? You bring in an invasive animal.
Yeah, hippos.
And the second reason is that after you gorged the hippos on all of the water hyacinths, is that you would slaughter them and use them as meat because there was a beef shortage. And so they referred to them in testimony in Congress. Oh, what was it? As lake cow bacon.
Lake cow bacon.
And one of the guys who it was introduced by two guys, so outside of the congressman, Frederick Russell Burnham, who was the inspiration for the Boy Scouts, inspiration for Indiana Jones.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he'd gone and fought in the Boers War, been a tracker, been all over the world, had dealt with hippos. Somehow was part of this plot. And then there was a guy named Fritz Duquesne, who was a Boer, right? A Dutch South African, who apparently must have had the corner on some hippos in South Africa and looking to make some cash.
Yeah.
And they were trying to convince the American Congress to approve a bill to bring hippos to Louisiana. And they were like, oh, you can just fence them in. And people were like, can't they get out? And they're like, oh, no, it's easy to keep them pinned.
Yeah.
And so they introduced it. There wasn't enough time left in that session of Congress to get it voted on.
Yeah.
So they waited. And by the time he reintroduced it, there wasn't enough momentum. The beef crisis had like subsided. And apparently it fell a few votes short from actually being passed.
Wow.
So America,
we almost had hippos.
We were this close to a hippocalypse.
You've been waiting all day to say that, haven't you?
I just made that one up. It just came to me.
I like that.
So let us look at Colombia as a cautionary tale.
Yeah.
And realize that we were dangerously close.
Well, and you think about invasive species just in general, right? Like there are multiple invasive species in the United States, right? Whether it be plants or animals. But when you talk about like hippos, you're talking about like just such a grand, like such a bigger thing, right? Like most invasive species we talk about are like plants or like smaller animals that like take up space from native species. A hippo's, like you said, 3,000 to 9,000 pound animal that like is an invasive species. Like that's literally the definition. Like you could be going down the river in Colombia and be like, that's a hippo. Like that's a big hippo. I almost swore on our show, and I got to make sure I don't do that. So again, wanted to update you guys just so you were aware. We call them the cocaine hippos of Colombia because Pablo Escobar spent cocaine money on bringing them to his private zoo. Again, his private zoo got taken out of business when he got taken out of business, but due to a bullet. And yeah, so they left the hippos just to do what they wanted to, and they flourished. So we're looking at about 90 to 120 hippos in Colombia. So, you know, if anyone's got any ideas.
The best solution available at the moment is what they're trying chemical castration, where they're essentially trying to get the males to come into pens and eat essentially like laced cabbage, because that's apparently hippos' weak spot is for cabbage. Yeah. And it's worked with hogs, wild hogs, because that's another invasive species that's all over the Americas. Go Razorbacks. Yeah. But that's what they're trying right now. But it's still it costs money, and they're wild, and they're roaming. And the other thing that people don't like, that we I guess haven't really put in perspective for you, is that they're next to a river system, the river Magdalena, which they coined as the Mississippi of Venezuela. Like it is the main water artery that runs through Colombia to the sea. Yep. And if nothing stops the hippos, like they're right, populations grow exponentially. Yep. Right. The more babies you have, then the babies start having babies, and then babies start having, you know what I mean? They're looking at having like a problem of hundreds of hippos in a decade could be a problem of thousands of hippos.
Even tens of thousands of hippos. Because again, like the numbers we talked about, like they started with 4, I believe, right? We said 4. They started with 4, and in 2007 there were 16 hippos, right? So they've quadrupled. And then you look at 2000, I want to say it was 2014. It was believed to be 40 hippos. And now we're in, 2019 was the last number that I found, and we were talking that number of 90 to 120 hippos, right? So the hippos are just growing, like you said, exponentially. We have to be careful, right? Hashtag pay attention to hippos. Don't let the hippocalypse happen.
Stop the hippocalypse. Really the problem is, does public sentiment prevent the government from doing what they know is responsible and right for the country? Yep. To protect their environment, to protect their economy, unless they're going to transition to, right, kids in school being like, when I, yo quiero ranchar los hipopótamos, I want to ranch, people are like, can you farm hippos? You don't plant them. You ranch animals. You ranch them. Ranchar, to ranch.
But let's think about this, right? Are hippos actually going to settle in on a ranch?
Just need a bigger, stronger fence.
Yep, and a lot more cabbage. You need a little Avatar, The Last Airbender. My cabbages!
So, America, it could have been us.
It could have been us.
Like, could you imagine how worse? Oh, man. Hurricane Katrina plus hippos.
Yeah, it's South America. Could you imagine hippos just wandering New Orleans?
Yeah, well, like you think about, like, we already have like the Asian carp, right? The Asian carp's this big problem. Now, right, they can jump up and hit you in the face. Now imagine that Asian carp's 9,000 pounds, and it's like a Volkswagen Beetle like hitting you in the face.
Yep. Tis no bueno, as they say in Colombia.
and muy guano.
Oh man. So
that's a lot of algae.
Yep. Jesus. I hope you enjoyed our episode on the cocaine hippos. I hope you this is a fun topic to talk about. So again, take a look. right? Cocaine hippos in Colombia. Let us know your opinion. You know, are you paying the 50 grand to sterilize a hippo or to try and sterilize a hippo? By the way, on the sterilization, I forgot a fact. Not only do they cost $50,000 to sterilize a hippo, the hippo that they did it most recently to almost knocked the crane over. Like trying to turn it over, like lift it with a crane, it almost knocked the crane over. So, yeah, it's a fun one to talk about. Barker, great topic. Until next time, I'm going to be the Turn.
I'm the Bark.
And we're going to be here a long time. Have a good night, everybody.
Be safe.
And be well.